working? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. Perhaps William Clouston does. William, very good morning to you.
Morning.
Very good to see you. You've been away travelling on your travels, which we'll get to a little bit later on.
Yeah.
I guess we should kick off with the big story of the morning, which is the rape gangs, and what on earth this Labour government is doing to basically deny justice to so many young women who they say they want to protect and who they say they want to fight for. You know, they say they want to safeguard young women and girls, and yet here's an absolute opportunity to do it, and they've turned it down.
Well, they will, and I think it's because the whole episode cuts against their worldview. That's the reality. So all of these Labour MPs, they have a worldview based on oppressors and victims, right? And the oppressors are white people and the victims are various minorities. That's how they think, Mike.
So they can't actually see the reality.
They can't get the reality cuts up against that. It's so butts up against the whole worldview, and that's why their reaction is to resist it and pretend. They're actually pretending. I think the reality of what's happened is so bad that their reaction is just to sort of deny it themselves. They can't deal with it. It is, it must be the biggest race-based crime in post-war Europe. Probably.
It got to be.
Probably, on the numbers. It's horrific.
I mean, it's almost like the level, for me, only worse, of a terrorist attack.
It is, Cumulatively, it's discussed, but things are changing a little bit. Obviously, Rupert Lowe has done a lot of good work on it. There was a brilliant little speech by Katie Lamb. I don't know if you saw that.
We've been playing it out all morning because I didn't know much about Katie Lamb until today, but she was magnificent.
Rising star. Yeah,
absolutely amazing.
As I say, I don't share a lot of Tories. One or two people that speak. If my view is if they say the right thing, and if we agree with them, we will share it and support them. But she deserved. It was a very brave speech.
We've actually, since you mentioned her, let's play a little quick clip of her. This is her talking about her how one victim was made to marry her abuser.
There is no question that the state has failed these children time and again. Take the case of Anna from Bradford. Vulnerable and in residential care, at the age of 14, she made repeated reports of rape and abuse to social workers who were responsible for her. But just the following year, aged 15, she married her abuser in a traditional Islamic wedding ceremony. Far from stepping in to stop it, her social worker was aghast. The authorities then arranged for her to be fostered by her abuser's parents. The ringleader of the Rochdale rape gang, Shabir Ahmed, was employed as a welfare rights officer by Oldham Council. And yet not one person, not one, has been convicted for covering up these institutionalised rapes.
Yeah, there you go.
It is extraordinary, isn't it?
And listen, this is such an emergency, and it's still going on. We're in touch with people in South Yorkshire, who helped, uncover this stuff. And they've told us that it's still going on, and they're sitting there like lemons and not doing it. I don't think, honestly, it's a disgrace. This won't change unless the public know about it and we know about it and we know the numbers, and then the people that are covering it up need to be prosecuted.
Yeah, totally. I mean, people need to be taken to task for this. It's not just about, explaining why people became victims or these young women are exploited. It's about punishing the people that did it. Surely.
Absolutely, as a minimum. And but then their reaction to it. Look at the two reactions to two different things, Mike. So BLM happens, George Floyd, and all the Labour Party jump on it and give it massive publicity. Rayner and Starmer.
He was a drug dealer. Despite the fact that he'd once held a gun to a pregnant woman's stomach.
Despite the fact that it's not even in this country. Right? And they did it. So their reaction was to take the knee for it, take photographs, promote it, get on the bandwagon on that. And this is a thing which is in this country and it's off the scale. And they try and hush it up. So Tom Crowther, the barrister that they said they would help deal with it, he says he hasn't heard very much from them. Right. So basically all of their reaction is to try and cover it up. Or to use cynical sort of news management. Oh, we'll promise this and then sort of row back from it.
And imagine sort of using that subject as a political PR. It's shameful, really, isn't it?
It is shameful, No, I think they... and you have to worry. It's not, as I say, I think the fundamental thing is the liberal left system and diversity worldview. Their worldview butts up against what's happening. They just can't compute it. They just can't think this could happen. They don't think white people can be victims. This is what some people might call it settler violence almost. Absolutely disgusting. Can't deal with it. And that's one thing. But also the other thing, which again I hope isn't true, but is probably true, is that Labour's just worried about votes.
Yeah.
They're just worried about big blocks of votes.
And Jess Phillips, in particular, I think, should carry the can for a lot of this. Because here's a woman who claims that her sort of MO, if you like, is to protect women and girls. She's a safeguarder.
No, it's sick.
You know, she's talking absolute cobblers.
I know. And they won't face up to something that's happening all the time.
No. I've got an amazing text here from Paul. He says, "Morning, Mike. I'm a retired police officer who worked on a rape gang inquiry in Scotland a number of years ago. This is a national epidemic," he says. "There were hundreds of young white girl victims, and the perpetrators were all Muslim men of various nationalities, Pakistani, Afghan, Somali, Iraqi, and many more. It was a shambles, and from my perspective, a total cover-up from senior police to social workers and politicians. What was obvious was that these rapes and other abuses were not driven by sexual desires. These men controlled these girls and passed them around like property. A 2-year inquiry with 0 convictions, a scandal. I'm telling you, Mike, those in power do not want an inquiry. It's the biggest scandal in our history." I think he might be right.
I think he's right. No, it is the scale of it. It's
I didn't even know it happened in Scotland.
No, it's all over the country. I mean, they're saying 45 towns and cities that we know about where there have been convictions and there have been cases. But no, it literally is all over the place. And meanwhile, they pontificate about violence against women and girls and get on the platform with that and operate an open border. 400 people. Eritreans, the biggest group. This is a country where violence against women and and abuse of women is rife.
We had a call yesterday from a man in Leeds who said you wouldn't believe the number of Eritreans who have now moved into Leeds, who are all getting houses in sort of public housing opportunities. People can't get a council flat because they're all being given to Eritreans. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, but it's a culture transplant. This is what the reality is. I mean, doesn't want to. The Labour Party are quite happy to say diversity is strength, all this, and all the slogans, simplistic slogans. They can't read. They're not facing the reality.
And we now know, don't we, that most of, if not all of the young men who come into this country by illegal boat crossings are either employed in sort of nefarious black market businesses like drug gangs or car washes, all of that. Hardly any of them end up being contributors to the economy. Most of them will end up on benefits in one way, shape, or form.
And in many
what are we bringing them in for?
And because they just lack self-assertion and they've lost control.
People ask me a lot, William, and maybe you can answer this. Is there a concerted effort being made by this government to bring these people in for a purpose that we don't know? Doesn't make any economic sense.
No, it's absolutely crazy. No, I don't think that's true. I think the curse of the ruling class in this country, the political ruling class, is weakness.
Yeah.
They won't. They are, I've said many times before, they're more worried about middle-class tea parties and what people think of them than getting a secure border. Yeah. We could get a secure border. Henry Bolton's come on board with the SDP, and I'm very excited about it. I speak to him, and he's an expert on it. He tells me, and he's right, that if we got a detention centre on Ascension Island, you build it, take 8 months, and you had a government that was committed to pulling out of the legal apparatus that protects this sort of thing, you could solve the problem. The flow on the migrant flow on the South Coast could stop to nothing, virtually nothing. If you they don't want to do it, and the rhetoric continues. All this smash the gangs. This was nonsense. I listened to Starmer when he was saying that, and I thought, mate, you have no idea. You've left the incentives to come here and get benefits and have access to the welfare state they've never paid a penny into. You leave that incentive in, and the flow will just continue. And that's exactly what's happened. The flow now is bigger than it was before. So if you care about the safety of cities and the safety of towns, you cannot do that.
No, exactly right. Let's talk about tariffs, subjects you know an awful lot about. I don't talk about it a lot as a subject, only because I think most people don't really kind of understand global trade. They don't really. They sort of glaze over.
They do
when they hear about anything to do with percentages. But we're told this morning there's a big trade war going on between America and China. What's your take on it?
Well, I'll try and simplify it. Basically, America is the apex purchaser in the world. They buy goods from all over the world. Buy a lot of Chinese goods, hundreds of billions of Chinese goods and goods from around the world. But the problem for America, and Trump, I'm afraid, I don't agree with Trump on everything, but he's right about this. Trump and Vance are right about this. They cannot continue to buy more than they produce. And that's what they're doing every year. So I'll bring a number in. 1.2 trillion is the trade deficit they've got. And if you keep on running these deficits, you just get poorer each year. And what happens, if you look at the international debt position and creditor position in the United States over the last 34 years, the United States used to be a creditor nation. It used to own things. Now it just owes. It owes things, and it owes foreign interests own their assets, and they're in obviously a lot of the treasury market, and they're now a debtor nation, and it can't go on. The people, I've debated this with many free traders. If you think you can just continue down this road to beggary, then the biggest economy in the world, America, is just going to go pop one day. It's just going to go pop. They have to deal with it. They have to.
Particularly when dealing with places like China. I mean, I've said this to people as you have about, you know, who are all about free trade and, you know, being very, you know, properly liberal as opposed to, you know, the Liberal Democrats who are not liberal at all. Or the new liberals who are not liberal at all. You know, the idea that you're a sort of, you know, you're absolutist when it comes to, you know, there are no trade barriers anywhere. Well, that's fine if all countries are equal, but they're not.
They're not.
If you're dealing with a country that's actually employing slave labour to produce goods so cheaply that you can't compete with them.
You can't.
Then that damages your economy.
It does, and it's funny that when Trump announced the tariffs, one of the first people to praise him was Sean Fain, the leader of the United Auto Workers, and the United Auto Workers Union absolutely 100% behind the tariffs. Why? Because they have plants all over in Tennessee and Michigan, obviously, and other places that are under. That are under capacity and that could be expanded. So if you want to deal with the trade gap, you've got to put some protection in, I'm afraid. And he's quite right about the point about free trade. You know, everyone loves free trade if it's really free, but the idea that you have global free trade is actually quite utopian. It doesn't really exist. You get China, a lot of other countries put in non-tariff barriers and don't pay their workers as much as an American worker would. And if I were a member of that union in America, I'd want tariffs.
Well, exactly right. I mean, I was using the example that I know from my own experience of living in America, that, you know, how is it possible that you can buy a British car in America or a European car in America for less money than you can buy it here?
It's crazy.
It's because of the way that they do their pricing. Because, you know, you can buy, say, a Mercedes that would cost you $30,000 here. You can pay $20,000 for it.
Yeah, there's probably less tax on it as well, sales tax. But I mean, and then you get the reaction, obviously, the EU's reaction and Starmer's reaction. I mean, Britain, I think the 10% tariff that Trump... It is a problem. 25% on British cars is an issue. But 10% generally is not something I'm too concerned about. Why? Because the rate of exchange between the dollar and the pound fluctuates quite wildly. The last 4 years, 3 years, 4 years, it's the 27% peak to trough difference. That's far bigger than the tariff. So the exporters will deal with it. And then
also, Georgia Maloney said something interesting this week, where she said, actually, the net zero demands that are being made on European countries by the European Parliament and by the EU are actually like a tariff.
Oh, they're far bigger.
It means that they're actually worse than tariffs.
They're worse
because it's costing countries money to put, you know, these ridiculous kind of levies on energy.
And then you get a stupid government like one we've got now with Miliband. And Miliband won't let us extract and drill for our own gas and our own oil. Biggest export from the United States to Britain, crude oil. And again, you're in a bind, Mike. Because what are we going to do? We're going to put put a tariff on
oil.
You make it more expensive. Well, it's nuts. So I think Europe's in a bind with this. I'll say it now. It's going to be quite messy, but the United States have to do this. They have to redress this trade balance. And I'll say this now: if you're a surplus country like the EU, or EU's not a country, but if you're a surplus bloc like the EU or like China, you cannot win a trade war against America. America will win this if Trump holds out, America will win this trade war. And
it looks as though that will happen. Some people are worried about the markets going up and down, but in the end of the day, the markets are down again today. The FTSE down 2.4%. You know, but I've been talking to a lot of financial advisors over the last couple of days, and they're all saying, you know, for a lot of people, there's an opportunity to buy. Because the prices have come down, and people get nervous because they think their pensions are losing money, but they'll come back.
They will, and the fundamental value, the people that own these shares own shares in companies, and the companies will perform as they perform. But something like the S&P 500 with the big 7 tech companies, that was massively overvalued. And honestly,
well, the tech companies are where you don't want to be.
You don't want to be. No, it's massively overvalued, and it's an iron law of economics. If something's overvalued, in the end, it will correct. So I'm not worried about that correction. That's probably beneficial. It's going to happen anyway.
I had Bob Senior in here the other day, and he said the house prices will fall. Everything. I said, well, good. If house prices fall in this country, they should, because they're too bloody expensive.
Might give a few young families a chance to start.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Let's talk about your travels, because you were in some interesting parts of the world recently, which many of us don't get to go to. So tell us a bit about that.
Well, I've got family in South Korea and Australia, and so I don't often take a very big trip away. But I loaded the system with
some people might say, why did you come back?
No, exactly. No, it's very important. No, the other thing is it's very important. I think it's important to get off the roller coaster sometimes and actually get a bit of perspective. So yeah, South Korea was very interesting. Stayed in a temple, where one of my family members was raised, and it was very interesting. And in Seoul, they had all those massive protests. They're very worried about Chinese influence in Korean politics. So a lot of CCP out chants and all this sort of thing. It's an incredible country, South Korea. It's quite American.
And economically still successful?
Oh, yeah. I mean, their manufacturing is very strong. I think they are. I think the biggest problem they have, Mike, in South Korea is the birth rate. Yeah. So that total fertility rate's down at sort of 0.7. Wow. Well below replacement rate. And the thing is, it proves a point, really. The Korean government over the years has spent about $500 billion promoting births and promoting pro-family, and actually it's cultural. It doesn't. None of that has really made much of a difference. And then it was nice to get back down to Australia. We were married in Australia. Used to live there for a while. I got a block of time because I was seeing a lot of people, and I had a block of time of about the best part of a week, just to do a very long car journey. I drove from Brisbane down to Melbourne through the tablelands.
That is a long way. What, through the middle?
Yeah, no, we're through sort of New England. Around the outside as far as Forbes and Armadale and all these places. And it was just fantastic. And I could say hinterland Australia in these areas is doing very well. I think it's a lovely.
And have they got a handle on their immigration now, would you say?
Oh, yeah. No, Australia has, as a Western country, is one of the best places in terms of immigration. Why? Because they control it. I think it is too high, but they get a lot of very high-skilled migration from APAC, from their region, really. And at least they're in control of it, Mike. And the people that, it's beneficial. It's not low skill, and it's not people just breaking into your country. Right. John Howard stopped the breaking into to Australia. When he won an election on it, he said, we will decide who comes to this country under what circumstances.
Exactly.
Won the election, and they've got a system. If you arrive unsolicited, you end up in Papua New Guinea.
And that's what Americans say as well now. America's saying, we decide if we give you a visa to come here to study at university, and you decide to wreak havoc and start terrorising people because you support, Palestine, we're going to kick you out.
Basic democracy, Mike. Basic democracy. No, it was lovely to get back, and I've had a few days in Singapore on the way back. So it was good. So I'm, recharged and ready to go.
Recharged. You look very healthy. You look as if you've had a good rest. Great to see you. William Clouston there talking great deal of sense. Katie Lamb says Shane is